The moment had built gradually, not with fireworks but with a steady exchange that many assumed would be predictable. Donald Trump was in his element, speaking with the same sharp tone that had carried him through countless rallies and television appearances. His words came fast, his points laced with criticism, circling back again and again to the same idea that Barack Obama had failed in ways he would never allow. For those watching at home, it looked like another classic scene where Trump controlled the tempo, where his interruptions and confidence might rattle his opponent, but Obama didn't seem unsettled. He leaned back slightly, his posture relaxed, his eyes fixed on Trump with a quiet patience. He wasn't rushing to jump in, wasn't raising his voice to match the volume across the stage. He waited, letting Trump build higher and higher until the weight of his words became almost too much for the air to hold. When the silence finally came, it was thin and expectant. Obama shifted forward just enough to let the microphone catch his voice, and then, in that measured, steady tone that people remembered from his days in office, he delivered the comeback. There was no anger in it, no flash of temper, just a clean, precise line that seemed to slice through Trump's performance like glass shattering under pressure. The sentence was short but packed with meaning, a reminder of a truth so obvious, yet overlooked, that the audience collectively inhaled at once. Some laughed instantly, unable to hold back, while others sat stunned, unsure of how something said so calmly could carry such force. What made the moment shocking wasn't just the content of Obama's words, it was the way he delivered them. He didn't speed up, he didn't gesture wildly. He simply placed the line in the middle of the room and let it settle. His voice didn't climb or fall dramatically. Instead, it carried a steady weight, as though the comeback had been prepared, not for performance but for clarity. And that clarity made the remark hit harder than any shouting match could have. Trump had spoken for minutes with his usual flair, but in less than 10 seconds, Obama had taken control of the entire exchange. The camera caught Trump's reaction immediately. For once he didn't have a quick retort. His mouth opened slightly, his eyes narrowed, and he blinked more than usual as he tried to process the unexpected blow. The silence from him was noticeable, because silence was rare. For years, audiences had grown accustomed to him firing back instantly, never letting a jab go unanswered. But this time, the pause stretched longer than anyone anticipated, and in that gap, Obama's precision looked even sharper. The audience inside the studio reflected the range of the nation. Some clapped their hands, some whistled, some whispered to each other as though trying to confirm what they had just heard. Social media was already buzzing, with phones pulled out mid-show, people typing furiously, knowing they had just witnessed a moment that would spread faster than any planned campaign clip. Within minutes, hashtags appeared, and millions across the country replayed the few seconds over and over. The simplicity of it stunned people. How could one calm, unhurried sentence feel like such a knockout? That was the power of precision. Obama didn't need to shout, he didn't need to match Trump's fire with fire. He understood that sometimes the most devastating response was the quietest one, the one that exposed a truth so directly that no amount of noise could cover it. And in that instant, America saw the contrast clearly, two styles colliding on live television, one relying on volume and repetition, the other on timing and control. It wasn't just politics that made the moment memorable. It was the reminder of how words could carry weight when placed carefully, how a single line could alter the rhythm of a conversation, and how calmness could be more powerful than noise. Barack Obama stunned Trump not because he tried to outdo him in energy, but because he chose not to. His measured tone made the comeback land harder, leaving a mark on the stage, the audience, and the millions who would later call it one of the most shocking live TV exchanges in years. Donald Trump was not a man known for silence. His reputation, both in politics and business, was built on quick reactions, fast rebuttals, and a refusal to let anyone have the last word. On live television, he had mastered the art of dominating the moment by speaking louder, faster, and more often than anyone else on the stage. It was this very trait that had many viewers expecting a back and forth with Barack Obama, something fiery, perhaps even chaotic. But what unfolded instead was something no one could have predicted. Trump launched into one of his long stretches, pointing out failures he believed belonged squarely to Obama's years in office. He gestured with his hands, his voice rising and falling with practiced emphasis, his confidence filling the room like an echo chamber. The crowd, familiar with his style, waited for the inevitable clash. But when Obama finally spoke, his words carried a precision so sharp it stopped everything in its tracks. The comeback was calm, deliberate, and devastating in its simplicity. And for the first time, Trump didn't fire back. There was a visible shift in the air the second the remark landed. Trump's face stiffened, his jaw set tight as though bracing for the wave of laughter that immediately followed from some corners of the room. He blinked rapidly, searching for the next words. The retort that usually came as naturally as breathing, but nothing came. His usual rhythm, the one that had carried him through debates, interviews, and press confrontations, broke apart right there on live television. Instead of charging forward, he hesitated, caught off balance in front of millions. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every second of his reaction. Obama remained still, his lips pressed into the faintest smile, his hands folded loosely on the podium. He didn't press the advantage, didn't pile on more words. He simply let the silence hang there, knowing it spoke louder than anything else could. For Trump, that silence was crushing. He was not accustomed to losing control of the stage, and his inability to answer immediately became the story. Viewers around the country noticed it instantly. Trump was speechless. Social media lit up within moments. Tweets and posts didn't just focus on what Obama said. They focused on what Trump didn't say. The fact that he couldn't produce a comeback became the punchline. Clips replayed endlessly, highlighting the gap between Obama's calm delivery and Trump's rare pause. Commentators described it as a reversal of roles, with the usually dominant Trump forced into a position he had long avoided, reacting instead of leading. What made it so shocking was not just the comeback itself, but the way Trump's silence underscored it. People weren't used to seeing him at a loss for words, and the absence of his usual fire only amplified Obama's precision. It wasn't that he didn't want to respond, it was that in that moment, he couldn't. He searched for something to say, but every option seemed weaker than the line that had just been delivered. The weight of that pause grew heavier with each second, and the cameras made sure no one missed it. In the living rooms of America, families exchanged looks. Some laughed, others shook their heads, but everyone recognized the rarity of what they had seen. Trump's strength had always been his ability to control the narrative through sheer volume and speed. To see that skill fail him was jarring, even for those who supported him. It revealed that underneath the bravado, there were moments where the right words could still pierce through and leave him with nothing to hold on to. Obama, for his part, never once raised his voice. He seemed to understand that the victory wasn't in piling on or stretching the moment too far, it was in leaving it as it was. A clean strike followed by a silence that exposed everything. Trump's pause did the rest of the work for him, and as the debate continued, that single hesitation lingered in the minds of everyone watching. Even as Trump regained his footing later on, the memory of his silence remained, replayed endlessly by viewers who had never expected to see him caught so off guard. In that one exchange, Obama showed how sometimes the most powerful blow doesn't come from force or repetition, but from timing. By delivering a single line that Trump couldn't answer, he revealed a vulnerability few had seen before. And the fact that Trump was left speechless on live television, even for just a few seconds, became the moment America couldn't stop talking about. The exchange itself was only a few seconds long, yet the reaction that followed stretched far beyond the studio walls. As soon as Barack Obama's words landed and Donald Trump froze in silence, the audience inside the hall erupted in mixed chuckles, claps that cut through the tension. But it wasn't just the people in the room who felt the impact. Across the country, millions of viewers watching on television or streaming online were already reaching for their phones, ready to capture the moment, replay it, and send it into the endless circulation of social media. Within minutes, clips of Obama's comeback appeared everywhere. Different angles, short edits, slow-motion replays of Trump blinking, stunned, all spread like wildfire. Hashtags shot to the top of trending lists, with phrases quoting Obama's precise line or mocking Trump's silence. Some posts were like turning the freeze into memes, others were more serious, calling it one of the most unexpected debate moments in years. The speed of the reaction reflected not just the content of the exchange, but how people had been waiting for something like this, a clear, undeniable turning point that no amount of spin could erase. News outlets scrambled to catch up, their headlines competing with the flood of online commentary. By the time the debate was even halfway finished, entire panel discussions were already dedicated to analyzing those few seconds. Commentators replayed the clip over and over, dissecting Obama's tone, his timing, and his decision to remain calm rather than push further. What made it more fascinating was Trump's uncharacteristic pause, a silence that seemed to grow louder with every replay. For years, his ability to talk through any criticism had been one of his strongest tools. Seeing that vanish on live television gave the moment an electricity that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Americans in living rooms, bars, and restaurants across the country couldn't stop talking about it. People who normally avoided politics found themselves replaying the clip just to see Trump's expression when the comeback hit. Some who supported Trump brushed it off, claiming it was a minor pause, but even they couldn't deny how unusual it was to see him at a loss for words. Others celebrated it, seeing in Obama's response a kind of sharpness and control they had been missing in political discourse. The reaction wasn't uniform, but it was universal. Everyone had something to say about it. Even international outlets picked it up. Reporting on how a single line from Obama had managed to dominate the news cycle. Commentators abroad described it as a rare moment where American politics produced not just drama, but a moment of pure rhetorical precision. The fact that it wasn't loud or over the top made it even more effective. People in other countries noted how the reaction of Americans, especially the younger generation online, showed just how deeply the exchange had resonated. Asterisk, the memes alone told the story. Images of Trump's frozen face were paired with captions exaggerating his silence. While Obama's calm smile was edited into everything from movie posters to sports highlights, the internet had transformed the moment into a cultural phenomenon overnight. For many, it wasn't just about politics anymore, it became entertainment, proof of how quickly a single sentence could shift the national conversation. Asterisk, yet underneath the humor and the viral clips was a deeper recognition. The comeback highlighted the contrast between the two men in a way that no campaign ad or carefully planned message could. Obama's deliberate calmness stood out even more against Trump's usual intensity. Viewers noticed that he didn't try to gloat or extend the moment, he let it breathe. And in doing so, let Trump's silence do the work. That restraint added weight to the reaction, making it not just funny or shocking, but memorable in a way that felt significant. Asterisk, as the hours turned into days, the reaction didn't fade. Instead, it grew, as more shows replayed the exchange and late-night hosts turned it into monologues. The fact that America was still talking about a few seconds from a live broadcast showed just how rare it was. People weren't stunned by shouting or insults. They were stunned by how a single calm line could throw Trump off balance so completely. Obama's comeback had not only sparked a reaction, it had created a cultural marker, a moment people knew they would still recall years later. Asterisk, in the end, the reaction itself became the story. The debate had other exchanges, other arguments, but none of them were remembered the same way. What people carried with them, what they kept replaying and sharing, was the exact instant Trump went silent. And in every replay, Barack Obama's voice remained calm, steady, and sharp. The kind of delivery that turned a few words into a nationwide event. What made the moment so unforgettable wasn't that Barack Obama delivered a crushing line with dramatic flair, but rather the opposite. He did it with a level of composure that almost felt casual, as though he was simply stating a fact rather than dismantling Donald Trump's argument on live television. The lack of theatrics made it shocking. People were used to seeing debates escalate into shouting matches, interruptions, and exaggerated gestures. But in this case, Obama barely moved. He leaned forward slightly, adjusted his microphone, and spoke with the same steady cadence that had carried him through years of speeches. And yet those few words carried more force than a dozen heated exchanges. Asterisk, Trump's style was the mirror opposite. He thrived on energy, volume, and intensity. He had built his reputation on dominating stages, interrupting opponents, and speaking with the kind of confidence that drowned out other voices. That's why the contrast was so stark. As he fired off his criticisms, raising his voice and gesturing for emphasis, the audience expected a similarly explosive response. But when Obama's comeback came, it didn't match Trump's fire with fire. Instead, it was delivered like a well-placed note in a quiet room, so controlled and deliberate that it stopped everything else. Asterisk. The silence that followed wasn't filled with more words from Obama. He let the line sit, let it echo in the minds of the audience and in the cameras, broadcasting it across the country. That restraint, that decision not to stretch the moment, was what made it so devastating. He didn't need to add anything. He didn't need to repeat himself. The calmness itself was a form of power, one that seemed to strip Trump of his usual advantage. For someone who was never short of words, Trump suddenly had none. And the absence of his response made Obama's quiet remark feel even louder. Asterisk, viewers noticed immediately. Commentators described the comeback not as dramatic, but as surgical, precise, and impossible to ignore. The fact that it wasn't shouted only made it land harder. People replayed the clip, not because of a shouting match, but because of how unusual it was to see such an effective moment delivered with almost no effort. It was as if Obama had flipped the rules of the game upside down. Instead of matching Trump's energy, he showed that stillness could be more commanding than noise. Asterisk. Even those who were skeptical of Obama had to admit the effectiveness of his approach. The restraint he showed contrasted sharply with the chaos that often defined political debates. It was a reminder that power in communication doesn't always come from volume. Sometimes it comes from saying the right thing at the right time, and then knowing when to stop. That was what unsettled Trump most. Obama didn't chase the moment, didn't turn it into a spectacle. He gave the line and stepped back, leaving Trump to struggle in the silence. Asterisk, the calmness also amplified the shock value for the audience. It felt different from the usual political theater, and that difference made it stand out. People weren't just laughing or gasping at the content of the comeback. They were stunned by the way it had been delivered. It was almost anti-dramatic, and that's what made it unforgettable. America expected sparks and shouting, but instead it got something subtle, and that subtlety carried more weight than any raised voice could have. Asterisk, in the days that followed, analysts revisited the clip again and again, pointing out how Obama's demeanor had been key to the moment. If he had shouted, it would have felt like just another debate insult. But because he stayed calm, the contrast between his composure and Trump's silence created a memory that stuck. People remembered not just what was said, but how it was said, and how different it felt from everything else they had seen before. Asterisk, for Trump, The shock came not only from the words themselves, but from the style in which they were delivered. He was used to opponents trying to beat him at his own game, raising their voices, interrupting, and trying to outdo him in energy. Rarely did anyone step back and choose a quieter path. That choice left him disarmed, unsure how to respond, because the rules he had relied on no longer applied. Obama had shown that control could be more powerful than chaos, and that was what left both Trump and America stunned. The true shock of that moment lay in its simplicity. Barack Obama hadn't performed a dramatic takedown. He had simply spoken, with calm precision, and in a world where politics was often defined by noise, that quiet confidence became the loudest message of all. As the dust settled on that unforgettable night, one truth became clear. The moment was not about theatrics, but about clarity. Barack Obama had delivered a single line that shifted the tone of the entire exchange. Not because it was wrapped in drama, but because it was stripped of it. The comeback exposed the contrast between two men who had come to symbolize opposite styles of communication: Trump, with his relentless energy and rapid-fire words, and Obama, with his calm restraint and carefully measured timing. What lingered afterward was not the noise of the debate, but the silence that followed. Trump's pause, rare and noticeable, became the centerpiece of conversations around the country. People talked less about the policies debated that night, and more about how unusual it was to see him without a quick answer. That pause said more than any retort could have, and it amplified Obama's words in a way no amount of repetition could. It was a reminder that sometimes the most striking political moments happen not through shouting or spectacle, but through the absence of them. The country reacted as it always does in the modern age by replaying, reposting, and reshaping the moment until it became part of the cultural fabric. Memes, headlines, and late-night monologues all locked onto the same clip, but beneath the humor and the viral edits was an underlying acknowledgement. This was one of those rare live television instances that people would recall for years. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a turning point in how people perceived both Obama as the master of timing and composure, Trump as someone who, for once, found himself without words. What made the moment powerful was its universality. Regardless of political leanings, people recognized the rarity of what they had seen. Supporters of Obama celebrated it as a masterclass in control, while even some supporters of Trump admitted the pause had been noticeable, even jarring. For a few seconds, the usual divides in political conversation faded, replaced by the shared recognition that something unusual had happened on that stage. In the broader landscape of American politics, moments like these matter because they reveal more than policy debates ever can. They show character under pressure, the ability or inability to adapt in real time. Obama's measured tone and Trump's silence combined to create an exchange that captured those qualities more clearly than any prepared statement could have. It was shocking precisely because it wasn't exaggerated. Years from now, people may not remember the exact topics debated that night, but they will remember the line, the pause, and the reaction. They will remember how calmness outshone volume, how silence carried more weight than words, and how a single comeback reshaped an entire evening. It wasn't about winning or losing in the traditional sense, it was about leaving an impression, so strong that it transcended the moment itself. And in that sense, Barack Obama's calm precision did more than stun Trump. It left America with a reminder of the quiet power of words, and of the silence that sometimes